Okay, well, thank you for attending this city council meeting here in Montclair. And we'll begin with the invocation and the pledge of allegiance. And I'm going to ask the city clerk to introduce those two individuals.
Tonight's invocation will be led by Pastor Jamie Saravia from Truth Church, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilmember Lopez.
Great, thank you. Please stand. And then where's our pastor here? Come on down, sir. Don't be shy.
Good evening, everybody. Let's pray then. Dear Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for our life and for let us rule your world also, Lord, as your servant. Thank you that you made us in your image to exist in community with other people. We thank you for our city, and thank you for the elected officials, the businesses, the churches, and the families whom all together make our city a great place to live. I pray for these council members tonight, Lord. Give them wisdom, guidance, and the power to make the correct decisions and righteous in your sight. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I bless this meeting. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me as we recite the pledge of our flag of our great country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I please have the pledge? I'm sorry. Can I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Lopez.
I'm here.
Councilmember Martinez. Here. Councilmember Rue.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
I'm here.
And Mayor Dutray.
Present.
Thank you.
So this evening we have a presentation by the Monte Vista Water District, and I just want to recognize a couple of board members here, President Sandra Rose, and also Board Member Manny Martinez. And then I'll let Monte Vista, we'll start off with Justin Cole, the Executive Director. Or
Thank
CEO,
you very
or
much.
General Manager, what's your official title?
General Manager.
Okay.
Yes.
They don't make a CEO over there, huh?
Not yet. Some
Not yet,
do.
okay. All right, more pay.
I'm
more pay.
working my way
I don't want to
there.
give it to you, more pay.
He's just the head cheese. That's what we call him. He's the head cheese.
I thought it
No, what I am is the front man for some really incredible staff members who do a wonderful job providing water service to our community. I really appreciate this opportunity for you to invite us to provide a presentation on our new conservation regulations. And I just wanted to say thank you to the members of the Greater Montclair community, to you, your leadership, your wonderful staff. We're a wonderful community. We are very proud to say that we are the most efficient users of water in our region. That didn't come by mistake. That came from a lot of hard work that you're going to be hearing about tonight. And I also wanted to say that thank you to the City of Montclair, as well as the Montclair Chamber of Commerce, our regional partners, Conservation District. We have actually won awards through the partnership of all of our agencies. So I just wanted to say a quick thank you and introduce Kelly Donaldson, the Community Affairs Manager for Monte Vista Water District, to give tonight's presentation.
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. To reiterate, thank you very much for this opportunity to be here this evening to share this important water conservation regulation with you that will impact our mutual constituents and our community collectively. Before I dive into the meat and potatoes of tonight's topic, I have a couple of slides just to set the context for tonight's conversation, to tee up that conversation. So if you'll bear with me for a couple of quick slides just to give you some background. For those that don't know, Monte Vista Water District is a county water district that was formed in 1927, formed by a vote of the property owners that were here at the time. We were heavily dependent upon our citrus industry. It was booming, and there was a need for a developed water system, not only for irrigation, but for domestic water supply. So thus, Monte Vista Water District came into the picture. It goes without saying that a lot has happened over the last 97 years with our community evolving, but that has been due to a lot of hard work, both from the Water District, from our community leaders, and from our state electeds as well. Monte Vista Water District provides retail water service, so we deliver drinking water to businesses, residents, and schools in the city of Montclair, as well as portions of Chino and unincorporated San Bernardino County in between the two cities. We also provide a portion of Chino Hills water supply and have done so since the mid-1990s. So a little bit about where our water supply comes from. We're about 50% groundwater and 50% imported water. And that imported water comes to us all the way from Northern California from the Sacramento Delta. So it's conveyed a very long distance before it gets here. Sometimes conditions cause us to rely more heavily on groundwater or more heavily on imported water. As we saw last year during the drought, our imported water supply was severely reduced. So we did have to rely more heavily on our groundwater. In any case, droughts are cyclical, and we know that it's not a matter of if they will occur, but when. So this little graph here we have on the screen is a snapshot of drought conditions over the last 125, 30 years across the United States. And as you can see, it's a bit of a yo-yo between wet years and dry years. So again, not a matter of if it's going to happen again, but when. And so in a way to combat that drought and those anticipated water shortages, there's been a series of water conservation legislation over the last few years, over the last couple decades, actually. There's been some significant legislation that's been signed into law since 2009. We first had the Water Conservation Act of 2009, which put more pressure on water suppliers to ask our customers to cut water use 20% by 2020. So in just 11 years, we had to have them cut their water use 20% by 2020. As Justin mentioned, our customers have been phenomenal in answering that call. In fact, they cut their water use almost 40% within that time frame. So great job. Keep up the good work. In 2018, there was landmark legislation signed into law, laying out a new long-term water conservation framework for the entire state. It establishes strict targets for various aspects of water use. That's the bulk of what we're going to talk about tonight. But I also want to mention that last year there was an additional piece of legislation that was passed prohibiting the use of potable or drinkable water on non-functional turf on commercial properties. I'll dive more into what that means. Just a little preview of what's coming. So tonight we're going to focus on the State Water Board's Conservation is a California Way of Life. I'll also address that non-functional piece as we get to it. So conservation is a California way of life is the legislation that we're talking about tonight. It establishes the framework. The legislation establishes the framework or the what we need to do. So the state legislators determined we need to achieve this objective. It gave direction to the State Water Board on how to achieve that objective. That how or the rules were just passed by the State Water Board last month. So 6 years later, it's been a long time coming. And what it does is it emphasizes a target for water providers to meet, not each individual household or commercial customer. It's very important to remember as we go through this tonight. The targets that I'm going to talk about are for water providers to meet collectively as an agency, not for individual homeowners or commercial businesses to achieve. The water use objective, or the target, or the framework, we use those terms interchangeably, but the water use objective is an aggregate of the components you see here. Of the 5 components, the only ones that need to be met individually are the system water loss, the 4th icon to the right, if you will there. That is something that the water agency has to meet individually, and that was set by previous legislation. Otherwise, we're looking at all of these components collectively helping us meet that water use objective. I'm going to take a deeper dive into the first 3 components listed on the left side of the screen, because the latter 2 only apply to us as a water agency. So let's look at the indoor residential use. So the residential indoor water use standard is fairly straightforward. With more stringent legislation passed just last year in 2023, this number ratchets down tighter over the next 6 years. The objective allows for 55 gallons of water per person per day for use inside your home. That's for things to cover basic things like hygiene, cooking, drinking, sanitation, laundry, all of that. 55 gallons per person per day can go pretty quickly, but then that ratchets down even tighter to 47 gallons per person per day by next year. How do we measure this? Well, we don't really. Instead, our residential rates, Monte Vista's residential rates, take this metric into account. So I'm going to step away from the framework for just a second, and I want to talk about how Monte Vista sets its budget-based rates. In 2010, MVWD's Board of Directors approved a budget-based tiered rate program for single-family residential customers designed to incentivize water use efficiency. The more efficient you are, the better rate you pay. Based on US Census data, we have determined that households within our service area have about 3.6 people per household. So we based our budget on 4 people per household. So we rounded up a little bit. Our Tier 1 rates account for indoor residential use at a slightly tighter GPCD than what you saw on the last screen, and that's at 52.5 gallons per person per day because we were already working towards moving to those tighter numbers. So our indoor, or our Tier 1 rates, focus on that indoor residential benchmark of about 55 gallons or 52.5 gallons per person per day for the term of the bi-monthly billing cycle. Our Tier 2 rates are intended for outdoor water use. Well, how do we determine what you use outside? So again, we follow a different formula. We take your lot size, we subtract the footprint of the house, and we estimate about 30% of what's remaining is hardscape. Could be driveway, could be patio, anything that's not watered. And so we allocate watering for that existing landscape. All an estimate, all based on formula. You'll see that come into play a little bit later as we see what the state has developed. Very similar. So if you exceed your budget for what you should be using outdoor to water, then you're likely not watering efficiently. So you're going to be charged a slightly higher rate at Tier 3. If you're really using water egregiously and wasting water, you're going to bump into those Tier 4 rates. So you're going to feel the pinch a little bit more for wasting more water and using more water inefficiently. So now I'm going to bump back to the framework. As I mentioned, the framework includes a residential outdoor component or residential outdoor standard, which is going to look very similar to what I just explained about Monte Vista's calculation for outdoor water use. In 2018, when the legislation first passed, the Department of Water Resources collected aerial imagery throughout the state. They determined for each parcel what is determined to be irrigable, irrigated, meaning can be and is watered, irrigable, not irrigated, meaning it can be, but it's not being watered, or not irrigated. That would be our hardscape, our driveways, our patios. So it defined each parcel has 3 different categories of land, and then allocates the water based on what they estimate that square footage. It also provides a landscape efficiency factor. So it assigns a quotient to how much they think you should be using to water efficiently. That number through this regulation will ratchet down over time. Essentially, by the time it gets to the final factor at the end of this in 2040, that landscape efficiency factor is so small it's going to be very difficult to sustain a full green grass lawn. There's going to have to be some landscaping improvements that need to be made in order to meet that objective. So what you're seeing here is a screenshot of the portal that DWR has provided to water agencies. This is actually a screenshot of Monte Vista's, a portion of our service area. And as you can see, there's a lot of green. We want to see green. That means our customers are using water efficiently. The darker the green, the more efficient they're being. And then it kind of transitions to yellow, orange, red. Red is definitely not being efficient. They're highly inefficient. And so those are some of the customers that we might be able to work with to provide them with programs and help them improve their efficiency in their watering. This is just another snapshot of the dashboard that we can see through that portal. As you can see, our customers are heavy in the green. It's just another depiction of that last slide that you saw. That was a map. This is more visual with gauges and charts and whatnot on how our customers are performing with their water use outdoors. And then the third component through that water use objective is commercial outdoor water use. So very similar to the residential outdoor water use, it establishes a standard that our commercial customers will need to adhere to. It applies some of those similar landscape efficiency factors, ratcheting down over time, and requires that our commercial customers will likely have to do something with their landscape in order to meet that efficiency target objective that we're going for. A major component of the regulatory text that was just adopted requires a lot of work for the water agency to work with our commercial customers on developing best practices, providing outreach and education to them, providing programs to them to help them become more efficient with their work, with their landscaping. So there's a lot of work to be done from the water district's perspective, specifically with our commercial customers. So there's going to be a lot of outreach and education, and we'll be partnering with the city because we know that there's some concern about what the city looks like. We want it to be inviting. We don't want customers to stop watering and invite community blight. So we definitely want to work together on that. And we've had a great working relationship with the city and the chamber so far, so we'd love to continue that. And now that extra piece of legislation that I had mentioned. AB 1572 was passed last year, and it prohibits the use of potable or drinkable water to irrigate non-functional turf. What does that mean? Basically, if you have grass, if you're a commercial property or an HOA with a common area that has grass, and the only time you ever walk on it is to mow it, it's non-functional. Any turf that has a function is used for recreational or civic purposes. Parks are a great example. They're used for recreational, civic purposes. This does not apply to them. Non-functional turf means if the only time you walk on it is to mow it, it's gotta go. It can't be watered, right? And we don't want our customers just to stop watering. So we want them to convert their landscaping to something that looks nice, is water efficient, and it's a win-win for all. And there is a phased approach. It does apply to all commercial properties. It applies to schools, and it applies to publicly owned properties. So the city is going to have to comply with this as well. We're very fortunate that we have partnered with Inland Empire Utilities Agency, and we have achieved a grant, a regional grant, and we're working with the city on removing the grass, transforming the landscape at Fire Station 151. So look forward to that project. It's moving. IUA just selected a contractor, so we're moving towards the design phase and working very closely with the city staff to get that project up and running. So I talked a lot about what we have to do. I just wanted to mention that Monte Vista Water District has a lot of resources available to our residential customers and our commercial customers. We offer a lot of programs that are free. There's no cost to them. There's grants available. There's rebates, like turf removal rebates that are available. And we're here and ready to help with design, with applying for those grants, a lot of different things. So if your residents or your businesses have any questions about what to do next to be compliant with some of these or help improve their water efficiency, we have a lot of resources for them, and we would invite them to give us a call so we can help them along the way. And so I'll leave you with one final point. This is just to reorient us and wrap things up. We, collectively, we have a target to meet in milestone increments. And that target will shift from time to time. We'll need to recalibrate, regroup, and keep marching forward with our focus on the goal. And it's up to all of us collectively to make it happen. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Kelly. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Donaldson, for being here. I have a question and a comment. So my question is do you think as things are changing and moving forward that we will ever get to a place that residents will also have to water green space with non-potable water?
You know, there's been a lot of talk about non-potable water and expanding the recycled water program. Recycled water can be very expensive, and it's very expensive to move that infrastructure into the places that we need. So it's always a consideration, but it's not always the most cost-effective. So we're focused on more cost-effective opportunities, thus the conservation and the programs that we have available. But recycled water and non-potable water is always part of the conversation. It's just not as easy to achieve.
Thank you. And then my comment is I wonder if you could share with the residents here and who are listening online, could you share a very specific program that's near and dear to my heart? As we're moving into the winter season, when it's raining and our sprinklers are on, can you talk about HydroWise?
Sure, you're probably talking about the sprinkler controller program. And Monte Vista Water District offers a sprinkler controller program where we will take your existing sprinkler timer and swap it out for free with a new weather-based irrigation controller, or a WIBIC as it's called in the industry. But we can provide you with a weather-based irrigation controller that will do all the work for you. When it starts to rain, you don't have to manually turn it off. It will sense that there's moisture in the air and will not allow your sprinklers to activate. So that is a free service that we offer. Again, you have to have an existing timer in place. We'll take it out, put the new one in, program it for you, and you can even control it from your phone if you wanted to adjust watering times or anything like that. So
I want to make sure that everyone heard that F word that Ms. Donaldson used. It's free, free, and free. It's my favorite part of the program. Thank you, Ms. Donaldson.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Councilman Rue?
Yes, in one of the questions I have, you specifically mentioned in here HOAs. What about, say, an apartment complex that is not under an HOA, but they are still a commercial type? I mean, there's a lot of apartments, not just here, throughout Southern California,
Yes.
where it's a lot of lush green space and really nobody's using it.
Yes, great question, sir. And thank you for bringing that up, because originally when AB 1572 was moving through that legislative process, multifamily properties, including apartments, were defined. That was one of the last amendments that were taken before the bill was signed into law. So it does remove multifamily properties from that regulation, but it does specify HOAs, specifically common areas. And I want to stress that it's not an individual's property within an HOA. It's HOA common areas that need to abide by the non-functional turf irrigation ban.
And it would be my hope with multifamily units that the owners or property managers will be responsible enough down the line to do some change up, because we need the water. I don't want to see a time where hospital can't get water so I can, keep a lush green dichondra, whatever. The other question I have, you said city-owned, commercial meaning city-owned properties, whether it's this city or any other city. I know this city, we do have homes that we own. They're part of our, package. Would it apply to those?
There is a exemption, if you will, and that's not the right term, but that's the one that's coming to mind. If it is a disadvantaged community, you have a longer lead time to do that transformation project. So I know your city-owned single-family homes fall into that category. It is also something we're working on with IUA and some of those grant opportunities to see if we can do landscape transformation projects to help with the funding or offset the cost. But at this time, they did not qualify for the current grant that we have. So we need to get clarification on whether or not those fall into that category of publicly owned property.
So whether it would be this city or any other city, it would probably be advisable to do, the landscaping in drought tolerant.
If it's non-functional, meaning if
Right.
there's no family that uses it for recreation,
Right.
if you could prove it's your backyard and your kids play soccer or catch or whatever, then it's recreational.
But
purpose.
I'm talking about the homes where you just see, very few people are playing in their front yard. So those are the types of things that we can start to do, put in the drought tolerant, the California natives, things of that sort.
And there's rebates available for that right now. There is speculation that once we hit that final milestone deadline, that those rebates may no longer be available. So my word to all our customers is take advantage of that funding while it's available, because it can help us offset the cost of your project. May not
And then
cover everything. But.
The last question, it's more of a regional perspective. I know with MWD and attending some of the meetings and in presentations they've done, the one thing they do emphasize is that we are at present using the same amount of water we used about 40 years ago, despite an increase in population. So that is a positive, but the message of conservation has to continue to be out there.
It's the new normal. Conservation is the new
Our
normal.
era of our beautiful tropical landscaping is over, but that's okay because our California natives are just as pretty.
Okay. Councilmember Lopez.
Kelly, thanks for the explanation and the presentation. So am I to understand that AB 1572 is the trigger that prompted the non-functional designation of, let's say, front lawns and back lawns?
Not lawns, it's commercial property.
Well, now, okay, so residential's not,
This does not apply to residential.
okay, that's where I was
Commercial
thinking right
property.
away. Because I was just thinking that's going to be problematic, because then families are going to have to prove that they use the lawn or not, but anyhow, that's good. So anyhow, that takes care of that. The grant that you alluded to, secured by IEUA, who is the lead agency, IEUA or Monte Vista?
IEUA is the lead agency, and it's much bigger than even the IEUA regional area. It does include some other wholesale providers. If we collaborated with other agencies and improved our chance of getting that grant approved, and so there's about 35 agencies, don't quote me on that number, about 35 agencies that are participating in that. So Monte Vista's piece of the pie is going to Montclair Fire Station 151.
And then that's what I was going to ask, is what, how is it going to be divvied up amongst participating agencies? What would be our percentage? Our percentage, meaning Monte Vista's, not the cities. But thank you for designating 151 as the beneficiary of that grant. I guess call me a little bit old school, even though I'm the 40-year-old up here. I tend to be an old soul in a younger body, I guess, because I cringe still at the notion of seeing the day where lawns, where we start looking like Arizona. As we go through Arizona, everything is sand, rock, and predominantly cactus. And I understand we have drought conditions. I understand we're still technically living in a desert. But for folks to be able to landscape their properties the way they see fit, beautify it the way they see fit, and use whatever greenery of whatever kind they want, I think is a right that should be protected. Is it feasible for everybody? No, I get that. And if there are incentives offered for folks to reduce their water bill and reduce any other upkeep around their property by planting drought-tolerant plants, so be it. And I encourage them to do that. I just have always been against forced mandates by government agencies, no matter who they are. So I cringe at that notion, but I get the objective. I really do. And that's why I applaud efforts like Chino Basin Water Conservation District. The what is it? The one in Rancho that's based there has a similar name. Well, that's Claremont, isn't it? And then there's one in Rancho, the Conservation Resource Center. Did I say that one right? Anyhow, those agencies that are actually promoting conservation and giving free classes to folks and planning the stuff, and even offering classes and suggestions on use these plants that go good with your painting and your aesthetics of your property. I applaud those efforts. But anyhow, I hope everyone can get used to reducing their allotted gallons per day per person in the house. But will there still be some exemptions for folks and families that have more than 4 in a household? Because there are, with the addition of ADUs and extensions on property, you will no doubt have more residents on a single-family dwelling, and therefore, just by nature, you're going to have more demand and usage of water. So I hope that those regulations going forward will take those into account and not penalize them for that.
And Monte Vista Water District already takes into account that we do have some properties with more than 4 people. We do offer a variance budget adjustment, and that's something any customer at this time, regardless of the regulation, if they have more than 4 people in the household, contact our customer service and we can walk them through what that process looks like.
And that's why I brought that up, because I knew you guys made that available, and I wanted it so for the public benefit that live in those I guess, more densely populated properties, that they can take advantage of that and get the variance afforded to them.
And just to go back to your point about limiting all grass, right? That's the fear of what our landscape is going to look like. Just a reminder that this objective is aggregate. It's a sum of everybody's efforts. So we're not saying everyone needs to get rid of their lawn, but some folks are going to have to make some landscape changes. And so those tiny changes over time will help us achieve that collective objective. So I don't think we're going to desert landscape just yet. There's a lot of opportunities, and it's up to each individual homeowner what their preference is, if they want a pollinator garden or a Mediterranean looking garden. There's different options out there. Not everything is cactus and rocks. And thankfully, Chino Basin offers some visuals, a demonstration garden that you can actually walk through and look at what those different landscapes might look like.
And then just on a point of personal privilege, I'd like to extend some congratulations to Director Manny Martinez and Sandra Rose, and to my father, Tony Lopez, for the unchallenged results of the filing period, and congratulations on your automatic 4 years on the board.
Well, thank you very much. Again, obviously with climate change and the water shortages becoming more challenging, I know that in our area, we're fortunate to have the Chino Basin below us, so that's a great aquifer to store water. Obviously, these rules apply throughout the state of California, so some parts of the state of California are much drier and more dire situation than we are in the Inland Empire. But nevertheless, I think everybody has a right to have water. Water is obviously a very important element in our human lives. And with that, again, thank you for being here to do the presentation, and thank you for the Monte Vista Water Board members and staff. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on with public comments. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to the council. If you haven't filled out a blue card yet, you fill out a blue card to my left, you submit that to staff to my right. This is an opportunity to speak in any item that's not on the agenda or any item that's on the consent calendar. Obviously, we have one public hearing item, so that'll be dealt differently. You'll have 5 minutes. The City Council cannot discuss any item that's not on the agenda. And at this time, I'm going to ask the City Clerk if she's got any members of the public that wishes to address the council.
Yes. So I did have a request from Supervisor Kurt Hagman's office to speak, but I don't think Ruby was able to stay on the call. So we'll go to our cards for in the council chambers. First is Susan Elias.
Water and not beautiful houses, but it's continuing. I'm here again to discuss the matter regarding the neighbors at 9775 Coalinga Avenue. We are again here to get information officially on the record. As homeowners, we expect to be able to live in a clean, quiet, and safe neighborhood. What good are the codes and code sections in the city if the city does nothing to enforce them? The police and/or code enforcement have gotten this neighbor to stop parking his box truck that is over 10,000 pounds, and the camper trailer has been moved into their backyard, along with the jet skis trailer. However, in the process of moving the camper trailer into their backyard, they managed to scrape the side of my car with the rear bumper of the camper trailer. This was all on video from 3 different angles, and the spotter he had standing next to my car warned him multiple times on the video that he was going to hit my car, and then he did, causing damage to the driver's side door and front quarter panel. This neighbor never bothered to come and inform me that he had struck and damaged my vehicle. I filed an insurance claim for the damages, which amounted to $1,023 and change, to fix the damage to my car. I also tried to file a hit-and-run report with the Montclair Police Department. The officer sent out to talk to me was Officer Morones. The first time he came to talk to me, I felt like a rape victim being asked what I had done to lead my rapist on. Total victim shaming. The officer asked me if I was reporting the hit-and-run as an act of revenge against my neighbor. I told him no, it was a crime, and I'm reporting it. And maybe it would make the neighbor stop some of the harassment we are dealing with from him and his entire family. Before leaving, Officer Morones told me to file an online hit-and-run report with the Montclair PD. I did as I was told and wasn't getting any response until I left a voicemail for Captain Ventura. The response I then received was that there was no conclusive evidence that my neighbor had damaged my car and that they wanted me to remove my neighbor's name from the report and instead write that it was an unknown person. I then sent one of the 3 videos of the accident to whomever handles the online reports from citizens and told them I would not edit my report that way because I know it was my neighbor that caused the damage and have it on video. After that, Officer Morones was sent to talk to me again, this time while on the patio at the brewery. I was sitting in a chair and the officer was standing over me with his legs spread beyond shoulder width and his crotch almost at my eye level. If this isn't an intimidation tactic, I don't know what is. I again felt like I was being victim shamed as he asked me moronic questions do I inspect my vehicle every time I approach it? Could the damage have been caused by another vehicle while parked somewhere else? I approach my vehicle from both sides multiple times a day, and I know when the damage was caused and by whom. After watching the first video of the incident, Officer Moronis' comment was, I couldn't hear what they were saying because of the barking dog. That would be my neighbor's dog. When the spotter cried that he was going to hit my car multiple times, it was very clear on the video. Also clear on the video is when his son told the driver that he had hit my car. Also on the video, it is clear that once the camper trailer is moved away from my car, the girlfriend of the son looked at the car to check for damage. After Officer Moronis' second visit and victim shaming, I called and left a message for Captain Ventura requesting that Officer Moronis be removed from investigating this incident. I had sent all 3 videos of the incident from 3 different camera angles to Captain Ventura, then learned that he forwarded them to Officer Moronis, who then went to the neighbor's house and showed the videos to the neighbor's son, the female who had been the spotter, his girlfriend at the time of the incident, and a third person, an adult male, who doesn't live at that house and was not involved in any of this. Officer Moronis should never have let a stranger view the videos. After Monday's July 5th City Council meeting, when we brought the ongoing code violations to your attention, we also expressed our concern of harassment to Captain Ventura. Since the day they were shown the videos, the harassment has escalated. Yesterday, Sunday the 18th, a visitor for the neighbor parked as close as possible behind one of our vehicles parked at the curb in front of our house. And then the son parked his crew cab raised truck in front of our vehicle, with his girlfriend guiding him to get as close as possible, blocking our car in completely. If an emergency occurred and that vehicle needed to be moved right away or we needed to leave right away, it would have been impossible. I have done everything that I was legally obligated to do, including filing an insurance claim and filing an SR1 with the DMV. I'm sure they've been contacted by the state and the insurance company by this time, as well as the Montclair PD. And the son and his girlfriend, the ones living in the camper trailer in the backyard, are the ones who are currently increasing the harassment, and we're tired of it. We have now reached out to our state assembly member, Freddie Rodriguez, and if needed, we'll reach out to our federal rep, Norma Torres, as well. It doesn't appear that the Montclair PD is capable of handling this situation quickly and properly. How serious do things need to get before something is done? I have already prepared papers to get a civil restraining order, but I'm holding off on taking that step. We have the 3 videos of the hit and run incident, as well as the SR1 report that was filed and the repair worksheet for the repairs to the damage to my vehicle. We have videos and photos of all the recent parking harassment, as well as the ongoing harassment for the past 4 years, including their unleashed dogs coming onto our property, barking and threatening us. One of the daughters making a weekly routine of moving trash bins onto the middle of our lawn, all while family members watch and cheer her on. Another daughter randomly walking around.
Thank you. Your 5 minutes is up. Thank you. Next speaker.
Next is Xavier Mendez.
Mr. Mayor, council, city staff, dear Montclair team, it is with great sadness and a heavy heart that I report that the son of Steve Stanton, retired engineer manager, 30-plus year employee here who retired last year, was killed in a motorcycle accident this past Friday. His name was Ryan James Stanton. He was 27 years old. He worked for the city of Ontario, following in his dad's footsteps as a water quality specialist under the Environmental Programs Division for the city of Ontario. Just wanted to let everybody know about what happened and just to please keep Steve and his family in your thoughts and prayers during this time. That's it.
Thank you.
The rest of the comments are for public hearing.
Okay. So we will now go down to public hearing, just to consider adoption of resolution number 24-3453, establishing a 5-year schedule of the maximum monthly rate caps for refuse and sewer program. So Ed or staff, any other presentation, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the item will be presented by our Finance Director, Janet Kobeck.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City staff, members of the audience. I'm just going to do a brief presentation on the Proposition 218 maximum rate caps and go over the increases to the rates. The Proposition 218 hearing requirements. Article 12D, Section 6A of the state Constitution passed by the voters on November 5th, 1996, requires municipalities to give detailed written notice to the owners of parcels upon which proposed fees or charges are to be applied. At its meeting of June 17, 2024, the City Council authorized the mailing of written notices to property owners. Notices were mailed to property owners the last week of June. A public hearing shall be held not less than 45 days after mailing the notice, which is what we're accomplishing this evening. Property owners may submit written protests against the proposed fees up to and including the day of the public hearing. Property owners may also appear in person at the public hearing to voice their concerns. However, state law provides that only written protests shall be counted to determine whether a majority protest exists. The city clerk received 0 written protests. If a majority protest is not received, the rate cap may go into effect by adoption of a resolution by City Council. Residential refuse rates. Agreement number 18-26 by and between Burtech Waste Industries and the City of Montclair provides for the annual adjustment of residential refuse service rates. Burtech last requested and received a refuse rate adjustment effective January 1st, 2023, which included CPI adjustments and costs related to providing services related to SB 1383 regulations. This was the only residential refuse rate increase to Montclair residents since 2019. The table below reflects the proposed schedule of maximum refuse rates that can be assessed to residential customers for the 5-year period that runs from July 1st, 2024 through July 1st, 2028. So for this current year, 2024, we would like to increase the rate to $38.71. And then from there, that's when we get our rate caps for the next 4 years. Maximum residential refuse rate caps are not an indication of actual monthly residential refuse rates, and all future proposed refuse rates increases will still require council approval. At no time during each of the annual rate periods can refuse rates exceed the applicable maximum monthly rate cap for the effective year. If it does, we have to do the Prop 218 all over again. Proposed residential refuse rates. Following is a discussion of components that constitute the monthly residential refuse rate and proposed cost adjustments for each rate component. The refuse service rate represents the portion of the rate paid to Burtech for collecting and transporting refuse. Burtech is requesting a service rate adjustment of 44 cents from $12.73 to $13.17. The landfill rate represents a pass-through of actual transportation and tipping fees paid by Burtech. Burtech is requesting a dollar adjustment in the landfill rate from $6.57 to $7.57. The recycling service rate represents the cost of collecting and transporting recyclables. A service rate adjustment of 14 cents from $3.97 to $4.11 is being proposed. Materials recovery facility fee is affected by the volume of recyclables processed, the amount of contamination found in the recyclables, and the market value of recycled commodities. Burtech is requesting a 52-cent adjustment in the MRF rate from 83 cents to $1.35. The green waste disposal fee represents a pass-through of actual transportation and tipping fees paid by Burtech. Burtech is requesting a 70-cent increase from $3.33 to $4.03. The SB 1383 compliance fee represents costs related to state-mandated organic waste collection and diversion of such waste from landfills. This rate was subsidized by Burtech for the first year of the program. A service rate of 90 cents is being proposed. The 2022 catch-up fee represents a delay in refuse collection increases. A service rate decrease of $2.85 is being proposed. The household hazardous waste fee allows residents to dispose of hazardous waste at no charge through an agreement between the city and the county of San Bernardino. The fee is based on the actual cost charged to the city by the county. A rate adjustment of 7 cents from 55 cents to 62 cents is being proposed. General sanitation fee is a rate component assessed to residential ratepayers to reimburse for a portion of city costs related to general community maintenance. A rate adjustment of 15 cents from $2.82 to $2.97 is being proposed. The administrative fee is a charge imposed by the city to reimburse for the cost of administering the refuse service program. The current fee is $3.99 per month, and there is no anticipated adjustment to this component. Adoption of Resolution 24-3453 would increase the total monthly household refuse rate from $37.64 to $38.71, an increase of $1.07. Senior households would continue to be charged a refuse rate that is 20% below the monthly refuse rate for non-senior households. The monthly senior household rate would increase from $30.11 to $30.97, an increase of 86 cents. And you can see on the chart there the current rates and the proposed rates for each of the different components. Proposed commercial refuse rates. Following is a discussion of components that constitute the monthly commercial refuse rate and proposed cost adjustments for each rate component. Service costs related to the provision of refuse services. Service costs are subject to annual CPI adjustments pursuant to Agreement 18-26. Burtech is requesting a 3.48% CPI adjustment for commercial rates. Pass-through costs including a green waste processing fee and/or the landfill disposal rate. Materials recovery facility fee is affected by the volume of recyclables processed, the amount of contamination found in the recyclables, and the market value of recycled commodities. The disposal landfill rate for commercial bins and roll-offs is increasing from $49 per ton to $55.74 per ton, and the green waste rate is increasing from $54.37 per ton to $60.87 per ton. The frequency factor represents the number of times per week that refuse is picked up for disposal. The frequency factor provides ratepayers with a graduating discount rate based on the number of times of service per week. Bin size. Bins are provided in a number of sizes to accommodate different service needs. The franchise fee represents an assessment against Burtech for the exclusive right to be the primary solid waste hauler for the city of Montclair. This fee is currently 10% of gross revenue derived from commercial services. There is no increase in this fee component. The pavement impact fee represents an assessment against Burtech to compensate the city for damage done to pavement caused by heavy refuse disposal trucks owned and operated by Burtech. There is no increase in this fee component. Recycling fee is increasing from $3.14 per cubic yard to $3.96 per cubic yard. Food waste bin. Pursuant to SB 1383, all cities in the state are required to reach a 75% reduction in landfilled organic waste by 2025. Rates for food waste disposal will put in place in 2019. The collection rate for commercial food waste bins is increasing from $94.75 per ton to $106.08 per ton. The general sanitation fee is designed to contribute toward the cost of general community maintenance. This fee remains at 40 cents per yard and is multiplied by the collection frequency per month. Refuse rate comparisons. Comparative surveys do not typically offer clarity as to the cost of providing refuse rates. Rather, such comparisons provide a simple tool for showing existing refuse rate ranges for comparable types of service. Some cities may incorporate a variety of rate components within their monthly refuse rate, including but not limited to administration fees, street sweeping, sanitation fees, recycling fees, green waste fees, and pavement impact fees. Economies of scale greatly affect the refuse service rate for cities. Typically, cities with much larger populations that produce vast amounts of refuse are provided lower refuse service rates, a factor attributed to the lower cost per unit to provide refuse services. So on this slide, these are the residential rate comparisons. So City of Montclair currently is toward one of the highest. With the proposed rates, we're still in that same level. But if you notice, our complete rate will be $38.71. The amount that we're going to pay Burtech is $31.13. If you look at that amount, that puts us third on the list. But because of the additional charges that we pass on to our residents, the administrative fee that has household hazardous waste and the general sanitation fee, that's what puts ours higher. And for our commercial rate comparisons, we are the highest in the area, and this is based on a 3-yard bin serviced once a week. Now we'll look at the sewer maintenance rates. Revenues to support the city's sewer infrastructure derived from the equivalent dwelling unit fee structure imposed by the Inland Empire's Utilities Agency and the City of Montclair. Components of the EDU fee structure include the following. Part 1, sewage treatment. The treatment of sewage effluent flowing through the sewer system provided by AUA. This rate component will increase from $23.39 per month to $24.79 per month. Part 2, sewer maintenance. The maintenance of the sewer system which collects and transports sewage for treatment provided by the City of Montclair. An increase of 86 cents from $8.58 to $9.44 is being requested. Part 3, infrastructure replacement and rehabilitation. Long-term replacement and rehabilitation of deteriorating sections of the city's sewer system provided by the City of Montclair. This component will increase by 25 cents. Part 4, effluent contamination maintenance. The maintenance of sewer line obstructions related to foreign substances in the sewer system provided by the City of Montclair. This is a new component for fiscal year 2024-25 and is being set at 50 cents per month. Montclair ratepayers currently pay $33.47 per month per EDU. The proposed new rate is $36.48 per month per EDU, an increase of $3.01 per month. The table below shows the current and proposed rates over the 5-year period. So it shows there our current rate and what the proposed rates are over the next 5 years. So Mike Aragon from Burtech and city staff are available to answer council questions.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open this as a public hearing, and we'll give the audience, the public, an opportunity to speak on this item. Do we have any cards, any speakers, Andrea?
Yes, I have 2 speakers. The first one is Aaron Adams.
Okay, and again, each speaker will have 5 minutes, and come on down.
Madam City Clerk, what was the name again?
Aaron Adams. Aaron Adams.
Go ahead.
All right, well, thanks for letting me speak. I didn't realize I had to actually turn in a form in order for my voice to be counted. I thought by coming down here and speaking to you and to the public that it would be enough. So, interesting, having been a financial advisor and having a fiduciary responsibility to individuals and their retirement portfolios, I look at this and I go, well, anytime I get anything done in my house, I get bids, right? And from what I don't see here is, you know, other companies, Waste Management, Republic, Vista, Athens. I know there are other refuse providers, and Burtech owns the area, right? But if we open it up to competition, which is what capitalism is, it'll drive the price down because they'll compete with each other. And interestingly enough, going through all those bullets, it was the first time that I saw that we're not charging them we're not increasing their rates for damaging our roads, but they're increasing our rates 9% a year. So I went through it real fast. I had to do it a couple of times because 9% a year, everybody likes to just say, hey, 2024 to 2025, we're gonna raise it by $3. Well, it doesn't sound too bad. But if you go out and you go, okay, it's an $18 raise or 68%, because it's 10% on each individual increase. So you're not talking, you're talking, when you go through a time value of money, that's what you're taught when you put your money into an investment, right? They're charging you and you're paying interest. So you're paying an increase, and then you're gonna also pay a 10% on that increase and that increase and that increase. So I look at this and I think it's very disingenuous when we always put, oh, we're just gonna raise your rate by whatever the next year's is. Put what it is gonna be in 5 years. We're raising it by $18, right? That's what we're gonna actually see, unless we're planning on moving next year, right? And then So I ran through the bullet points, and it's interesting, because one, we got to pay for their educational material. I didn't realize that the sewer fee, which is going to be a $12 raise, which is the first time I noticed, they only tell you the small amount. It's just kind of frustrating. It's frustrating because, we vote for you, and you're supposed to be looking out for us, and seeing what you can do for us. Those trucks drive down our roads. I drove from Monte Vista, from Phillips, all the way up here, and it's not like Monte Vista's in great shape. It could get repaved. They drive their trucks up and down it. How come we're not charging them 9% a year increase, right? I'm not getting paid 9% a year. I can tell you all the neighbors around me are retired. 4 of the guys behind me are retired. They're not getting an increase in Social Security of 9% a year over the next few years. And then the ridiculousness, and you guys might want to talk about it more or not. I took down some notes, which is interesting because they talked about the water thing, which kind of irks me because I did go over there to Monte Vista when they raised our rates. And they told us to reduce our water by 30% 10 years ago. We reduced it. And then they came back and they raised our rates by 30% because they weren't getting paid, right? They lost that in their budget and they needed to make it up. So they raised it by the 30% that they asked us to reduce. And then last year, I went back to the meeting because they raised our rates again. And now they're squeezing us we're gonna have to use less water. And there's enough water that falls on this state. Mr. Mulholland, the Sepulveda, and all those, our great-grandfathers with the water projects, bringing it from the Colorado River and the Sierras. We built Oroville Dam in the 70s, and we watched that water go over the overfill, down the river, and out underneath the San Francisco Bridge, right? I don't understand why those 35 agencies, water agencies, don't go fight to get that water to be pumped down here and fill up our reservoirs. We have the reservoir capacity. We didn't do it, our great-grandfathers do it. Now, I understand raising the rates to do the sewer maintenance. And as far as I'm concerned, you can replace those pipes right away. Because the cost of inflation, you might as well do it right now because it's gonna cost more next year. And it's gonna cost more the year after that. So any dollar you have to go to the sewage replacement and anything that's falling apart, fix it right away. Because we're not making any more money. And it's difficult because I looked at the Monte Vista, the folks at Monte Vista, and you talked about this guy, and he's gonna get
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Your 5 minutes is up. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, next is Xavier.
First on the sewer, I noticed that we added the effluent contamination maintenance of sewer line obstructions related to foreign substances in the sewer system. Those are SSOs, sanitary sewer overflows, or plug-ups, which should be covered under sewer maintenance. So just wondering why we're adding a whole new expense rather than just raising the sewer maintenance one. And then, are we having more sanitary sewer overflows? Is this why we're having to add this type of money or increase to our monthly charges? If you look at sewer rates throughout this area, and I know like the city used to enjoy using or used Chino, Laverne, Upland, and Claremont as our comparison cities for sewer, we're at 3648. Chino's 3733, so they're a little bit more. Laverne, which is LA County, they pay $23.43 bi-monthly. Upland, they pay $34.24. Claremont, they pay, believe it or not, $6.44 a month because it's in their annual rate through their property tax, which is $77.27 a year. Claremont has the same type of up to, Montclair is trying to approve the 10% up to, and I know that doesn't mean it's gonna be 10% every year. I know it could be 2%, 3%, 1%, no percent. I understand that, but why put 10%? When Chino, their max is 5, Laverne is 4, Upland is 4, Claremont is 4, but we're putting 10. And I understand it's just in case, but I think we should be very careful with that. As far as refuse, yeah, I do know there are other sanitary trash haulers that we could try or check. I just don't know why we don't. But again, trash service, you know, we're paying $38.71, Chino $36.97, Laverne $34, Upland $38, and Claremont $43. So I guess we're in the ballpark in that area, so we're okay. But again, that also has that 10% potential increase that we could do, and I just think 10% is quite a bit when none of the other cities are using 10% as a number. And again, I understand it's just potential and it's up to, and I just feel like, you know, I don't think 10%, I think it's a high number. So, and that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other speakers in the audience? I have not submitted a blue card, want to speak? If not, I'm going to go ahead and close this. And I will start with, before I go ahead, I just, Ed, can you clarify a couple of things? This notion of 9%, 10% increase, can you clarify why it's 10%, the maximum cap, even though we don't go to that? Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Well, we go through this Prop 218 hearing because we are required to by law. And what we do is use the current year in which a rate adjustment is being requested, and it is being requested by Burtec for 2024. We use that as the base year for the new year in which we conduct the 5-year Proposition 218 hearing. Right. Under court rulings, it cannot exceed a 5-year period, and so therefore every 5 years we have to do a new 218 hearing. We try to estimate what the expected increases would be over the course of that 5-year period. Of course, we have no idea ultimately what it is going to be, but what we have seen in practice is that the rate increase that we set through this process is never met. Every year that we've done this for the last 15 years that the Prop 218 rate hearing requirement has been in place, we've never reached the maximum on each one of the years, let alone by the time we got to the 5th year, we reached that. So as indicated by Mr. Mendez, that is not necessarily a concern because he recognizes that obviously we have not reached the maximum, but nonetheless, when we do get at the end of the 5-year period, we have to conduct the Prop 218 hearing all over, and we use the same formula process again. The percentage adjustment spread usually is about 5%. Not 10%, and I think that's reflected in the tables. And again, that is in part based on what the contract CPI requirement is in the contract with Burtec. The reason why we don't go out every year for a new contract is that we enter into a franchise agreement with a waste hauler, and typically that franchise agreement period is for 10 to 15 years. And at the end of the period of the franchise agreement, then we can go out to bid and ask for new vendors to bid on the contract rate. It's not something that we can do every year. It's not anything that any agency does on an annual basis because it is a very costly process. And it doesn't necessarily produce a better result for you because vendors typically in the waste industry, like any industry, they understand what the current rates are and what they can ask for, and so typically the vendors bid a similar amount, so there's not a lot of variation. But in any event, the council has agreed to I believe in this particular case, it's a 10-year franchise agreement, or is it a 15-one that we're currently in? Do you know, Mike? Is it 10-year? Yeah, that's what I thought. So at the end of the 10-year franchise period, we would then go out to bid, and Burtec would have to compete with other vendors in that process. Again, we don't do it annually because it is a very complicated process, and the results and the gains for the community aren't significant. Our experience is that Burtec has been not only the best provider of services that we've experienced, but they also are typically the lowest cost vendor. Now, I understand that when you look at these numbers and you compare them to what other agencies are charging their residents at any one time. The numbers look differently, but I don't know that other communities have gone through their refuse rate adjustment at this point in time. Usually, we are finding ourselves in the position where we have asked for the rate increase earlier than what other communities are asking for, and that's probably because of the way the contract parameters within their respective communities fall. And so we are probably more efficient in that process in meeting with BERTEC and asking for adjustments. I also want to point out, though, however, that we don't have annual increases with BERTEC typically. Even though the contract with BERTEC does call for annual increases based on CPI, our experience more or less is that BERTEC typically only asks for increases every 2 years. So sometimes there's a catch-up component there, where with other communities, the increase may be annually, and with us, it's every 2 years, so that when we do ask for that increase, the increase is typically higher than what you would see maybe with another agency. And when that agency does its catch-up with BERTEC or whatever agency they are receiving waste haul services from, they will then either meet or surpass the city at that point in time. There are also different components, as Finance Director Colbeck indicated in her presentation, that are part of the contract rate with BERTEC. And other agencies may not have those cost components built into their refuse rate, but it doesn't mean that they're not cost components that they're not adding to their contract in other ways. So for example, in Montclair, we don't use BERTEC to provide street sweeping services. And therefore it's not a component of our refuse rate with BERTEC. But other agencies may use BERTEC to provide street sweeping services, but it's not a built-in component of their refuse rate either. But it is an added-on cost that is passed on to the residents through a different vehicle, and they pay that in a different way. So, as again, Ms. Colbeck indicated, it's very difficult to do an analysis and say that this rate is similar to what another city is assessing its residents, because the components are different. And we don't know necessarily how they pass on all of these costs to their residents in those various fee components that they have. We only have what we have, and we assess these charges based on what our experience is. And as the council well knows, we do not charge more than what the actual cost of providing the services is to the city of Montclair. One, we're prohibited by state law from doing that. And we're very cognizant in making certain that at least when it comes to the cost components that the city passes on, we typically absorb the cost, like the administrative fee component. We have not raised the administrative fee component in years. I would venture to say that if we did an analysis on the administrative fee component, we would find out that the cost of the city of Montclair is probably higher than what we're assessing to the residents, but that's one way in which we control the cost. Our costs directly, we try to limit them. The general sanitation fee, there is a request to raise the cost related to general sanitation fee, but that is because in that particular case, the cost of supplies and materials for us to provide the graffiti abatement is higher for us now because the cost of those materials are higher. The amount of graffiti that is oftentimes put on the walls and other properties in the community is more prevalent from one year to the next. In our community, when it comes to graffiti abatement, we typically are the agency that will abate all of the graffiti, whether it is on private or commercial properties, without us charging an additional fee to the business operator or to the resident. We have code enforcement that handles it to some degree, but more often than not, the process is for the city simply to dispatch code enforcement or the city yard to paint out the graffiti wherever it is. And those costs are something that, for the most part, we absorb in-house. So there are so many various cost components to the fee that it really doesn't do justice to do a strict comparison to other cities because of the way that those fees are applied. So again, there are many permutations to this that are not amenable to simply comparing ourselves to what another agency pays. But again, I want to go back to the beginning, and that is that the annual increases over each of the 5-year periods, again, is I believe only 5%, is not 10%, and we typically never meet those thresholds that we establish through this Prop 218 hearing process.
Okay, so basically, next year, maybe 0%. If there is an increase, it has to come to the city council has to review and approve it.
Right, and I do want to point out that there was that temporary adjustment that we provided to Burtech back in 2022 as part of COVID relief, and they're now reversing that. That is $2.85. It's actually coming off the bills.
And as far as the wastewater, the sewer, all the increases there, that's being impacted by a separate government agency called the Inland Empire Utilities Authority, which has its own governing body, and they're the ones that impose those fees and then pass it down to us, and we still have to do the Prop 218 and do the collection, basically, on the
We
sewer-
collect on behalf of
sewer fees.
IUA. We get the blame, we
Right.
get the criticism, where IUA simply collects the money and
Exactly.
they build up their
Which,
capacity.
cities have been telling IUA that, so. Okay, one more question I know was raised by a member of the audience on page 13 of the slide, the Part 4 contaminant maintenance, the 50 cents fee, the new one. Can you explain the Part 4? Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so we implemented that fee this year because the city is experiencing a number of sewer contamination spills, and we are fully responsible for cleaning them up. We are also responsible for paying the fees and fines that are imposed on the city related to those fees. In fact, this year, the city was audited by the state of California because of the number of contaminations, and we expect that the city is going to realize a penalty from the state of California related to the contaminations. We don't know what that penalty will be. We're hoping it will be minimal, but it could be up to $100,000 or higher, depending on the state's disposition on the matter. We also are in agreement with other cities to provide mutual services related to these sorts of spills while we back up and support each other. There is also the requirement that we have to provide the latest equipment so that another agency feels that we are competent enough to provide the necessary services. The council is well aware that in the last year, we just spent $500,000 on purchasing a new vac truck. This is after having purchased a truck just a few years ago. State of California has issued a rule that these vehicles are no longer eligible to be driven on streets of the state of California because they don't meet the vehicle emission standard requirements, or they are using a form of fuel such as CNG or other forms of fuel that are no longer compatible as far as the state of California is concerned. So we had to buy all new equipment, and these are all costs that the sewer fund has to endure. And because we provide these services related to businesses and other entities that produce these spills, because of the types of materials that they put into the sewer system, the obligation falls on the city, and therefore we are at the point where the sewer fee simply can't support all of these costs, and so we determined that we needed to pass on this cost.
Great, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 comments. First, on page 4, well, actually 2 comments. On page 4, the second bullet that says all future proposed refuge rates increases will still require council approval. So if heaven forbid, I hope it doesn't happen, but if heaven forbid there's a deep recession and things are really rough, we can renegotiate those rates. Is that correct?
Yes, we just can't go over the caps.
Okay.
So, yes, that's something that we always will go to council still. These aren't set in stone, and you always get to review the rates, and as Mr. Starr stated, rarely have we ever met the caps in prior years.
Excellent. And then my other comment was as part of the table on page 7, near the bottom, the total monthly senior household rate. I'm happy to see that the seniors have a lower rate, because my presumption is that as seniors, they probably have a lower income. And so I'm happy to see that we are provided that's being provided for the seniors. And the only other comment is I have to is a thank you for putting together this presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that concludes.
Okay, Mayor, Councilmember Rue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will start out, yes, I'm happy to see the senior rate remains. I have done some research with several other trash haulers. They not only have a senior rate, they have a low-income rate. It's based on income you submit every year. I really wish we could do something like that because it would help a lot of our residents. In talking to these trash haulers, they said that it is not subsidized by the city. In these cases, they just pass the trash company just has a low-income rate and a senior rate. So I really wish we could do that because it would help a lot of our residents. When does the current trash contract end? So it's 10 years.
I believe
Yeah,
we did it in 2018, so 2028.
So 2028, it will come back up
yes.
and it'll have to be done with an RFP or something like that.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a few more years left on this. That's good to know because I have some ideas down the future whether I'm on this council or not. I look at the rates and how they're increasing. I can tell you, my salary hasn't gone up 9%. My salary hasn't gone up 5%. I know a lot of people on fixed income, they're not getting 9%. I wish if I took money over to the bank, I could get 9% increase. Oh, and then something every year thereafter. It frustrates me because we have a community that is struggling. This is an increase. I have heard we had a few months ago an increase in the council's salary. I voted against it and I'm not taking it. But there are those who do. That's on their conscience. At the time, I was told that the low salary is an impediment to low to moderate income people running for office. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. People can have their opinion. But this is definitely an impediment to our low-income families. This is a lot of money. It may not seem like that to others, but it sure seems like that to the people I talk to. And I really don't know how we can justify this type of an increase. I would also like to say that if this goes through, I want to sit down with Burtek and I want some answers. On my street on Caroline for 3 weeks in a row, somebody had a high chair sitting out there. They wanted to get rid of it. Wasn't picked up. Now, I'm probably told it's a bulk pickup or a specialty or something like that. But why can't the trash hauler see it, call it in, and then maybe make sure even next week it's picked up? I wasn't able to talk to the neighbor at the time. I'm busy and I'm in and out for different things. I see other things in the city where things just sit there. And I realize there's bulk pickup process. I get that. But in many cases, why can't it just be picked up? It's trash. It's sitting there, whether it's a dresser, whether it's a stroller, whether it's a mattress. We worry in this city about whether or not we have green lawns because we want to be pretty. Yet, we expect residents to call in on bulk pickup for this. It should just be picked up. So that's something I want to talk to Burtek about because I don't want that. Yes, I appreciate their alleyway cleanup, but we need to do something about this as well. And I think that this is an increase that is truly unnecessary at this point. I know things are going up, but as I said, my salary isn't going up. Senior citizens on Social Security aren't getting an increase. We have residents on disability who are lucky to see 2 or 3% increase, and they have to pay this 9%. So I think we need to really consider this and look carefully at this. I think that anybody who votes for this should justify their vote. Thank you.
Well, before we go on, I just want to clarify. Janet, what is the increase on the residential refuse rate being proposed here?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, if I may, so Burtek is not asking for a 9% increase. Burtek is asking for a 3.48% CPI rate adjustment. The other components are fees that are pass-through costs that Burtek is it has to pay for the responsible parties related to those. Like the tipping fee is not a Burtec fee, it's a fee that they have to pay directly when they dispose of the refuse at the landfill site. That's out of Burtec's control. That's a hard cost. Same thing for almost everything else here except for the CPI increase. So Burtec's increase that they're asking for as a company is 3.48%. And you have to realize that within that is their operating costs, their labor costs, their fuel costs, the maintenance of their vehicles. So from the perspective of whether or not that's an exorbitant increase, 3.48%, I think that salary increases for, at least within our organization, that certainly is reflective of what employees have received. So I don't know that that is necessarily to be considered an exorbitant rate. I think that it's a fair rate, and it probably is in compliance with what the CPI is. But I also point out, and we certainly hear it, we hear it all the time from a national perspective, that inflation, which drives CPI, has been extremely high. But Burtec has never asked for an extremely high adjustment based on what the inflationary index is, which drives CPI. They've always been very reasonable in their requests. As I've indicated, they don't ask for increases on an annual basis. Sometimes when they come to us and they ask to negotiate, it can take 2 years before we've negotiated an increase with Burtec, and still the number that they ask for is well below the 5% maximum cap in their agreement. So even if inflation was 9%, Burtec is still going to only ask for a 5% maximum. And I don't recall that Burtec has ever even asked for that 5% maximum any time that we've been dealing with their contract. As far as a stroller or a high chair or anything else that somebody puts out, you have to realize that if it's on private property, Burtec cannot go on private property and remove that item. That is why we have the bulky call-in. When someone has a bulky item, they're instructed to put it out on the street, on the curb, next to the curb, so that Burtec knows that that item is to be picked up. We have an agreement with Burtec that when they drive the streets and they see bulky items that are out on the street that had not been reported, they alert us. If it's something that they can pick up, even though it has not been reported, our contract requires Burtec to pick up that bulky item. But if it's on private property, they cannot go onto private property. That is trespassing, and they cannot do that. The only way they can do that is if the property owner gives them permission to do that. Their drivers driving up and down the street don't know that a property owner has given or granted permission to enter onto private property unless they have a note in hand from Burtec that has instructed them to stop at that particular location and pick up that item. But in our contract, we do have a stipulation that if Burtec sees bulky items that are on the street that have not been called in, they pick these items up, and we receive annual reports from Burtec. They may even be quarterly reports that tell us the tonnage of things that Burtec is picking up. And I am telling you that these reports show significant tonnage. And I'm talking in the 10s, 20s, 30-ton range, that they are picking up bulky items on the street that people haven't even called in to ask to be picked up, because our contract requires that when they see these items on the street, they are obligated to pick it up. That driver either calls it in and Burtec dispatches a special truck to pick it up, or if it's something that the truck can pick up on the spot, they will, but they cannot enter into private property. I don't know if this is particular to what Councilmember Rue was speaking of, but I expect that the item wasn't on the street, but that it was on the parkway, or it was on further across the sidewalk on
1383. I believe Ms. Colbeck brought that to the council's attention. That, in addition to, as Mr. Starr mentioned, the CPI increase, and then there are increases in disposal recycling, processing, green waste, all collectively make up the increase, the increase in this year's rate. However, as Mr. Starr also mentioned, when we have adjustments, costs go up or down, those that we don't control, or we have makeup costs and that cost disappears, then the credit is issued. This year there was a $2.85 credit against those numbers. So your net increase this year from last year is just a little over $1. And that includes all of these components.
No, I appreciate that explanation because I'm sure a lot of residents throughout the state are seeing sticker shock on their trash bills, recycling bills. And for the benefit of the public that are in the room and those that may be watching, it is now a requirement placed on agencies, not just cities, to collect and encourage, actually, residents have to set aside food waste and, in our case, put it in a separate plastic bag but throw it into the green waste container. And it's the state law that has forced this upon every agency. And there are certain standards and numbers that we have to now meet. And that new law did not take into account any local community study or needs or our habits. It's just a cookie cutter approach to food waste recycling, and it's just thrown upon us. Mr. Starr alluded to the tipping fee, and I want to explain what that is. The tipping fee is what the industry, not them, the industry charges them and says for you to either dump your materials here or we have to clean them out for you. It's X amount of dollars or hundreds of dollars. Burtech, the trash haulers, not just Burtech, all of them in the industry cannot set those prices. It's just forced on them because they get to determine it. So it's a significant, huge pass-on fee that's given to them, which they in turn have to give to us. So it's just passing from one hand to the other. And the city manager was explaining that concerning other fees regarding the sewage, regarding the administrative fee that is charged, and other of the series of components that our finance director went through and broke down for us. One thing I want to say to the residents is whenever you throw an item into the recycling, the blue bins, they have to be cleaned out. And I'm not saying spick and span, but they have to be free of liquid. They have to be free of food. Otherwise, the contamination fee that was listed here and alluding to an increased cost, it's because they have to basically, folks are throwing in trash and gunk in that stuff, spoiled milk with their milk carton. It has to be cleaned. That fee gets passed on to us again because residents just didn't quickly rinse it out. That's just one example. And it raises the fees that we're seeing on the bill and what we're seeing here now. If folks were just a little bit more diligent in cleaning the material, properly disposing the material, it would lower the fees significantly and it wouldn't cause an indirect increase in fees because they're telling us it's not being properly disposed of. That said, and if I said anything incorrectly,
No, I think, Councilman, you're spot on. The one thing I would like to allude to, and again, Mr. Starr mentioned, out of all these, and you have the breakdown of our entire rate, our service portion, the service portion of the rate is the only thing that we as a company take. As was mentioned, it's going from $12.73 to $13.17 based on that 3.4 something CPI. Understand, for $13 a month, we send 3 trucks to each home in the city 4 weeks, 5 weeks out of every month. Truck, $400,000 vehicles that they are now pushing us towards from, we used to do diesel, then we went to LNG and CNG, and now they're looking, they said, well, you might have to go electric. Yeah.
Electric. Good luck.
And the cost of those vehicles are off the chart.
Yeah.
But fuel, the vehicle cost, the labor costs, insurance costs, not to say the barrel costs for everything. That's just all out of that $13. The other costs are pass-through costs, to your point. Disposal. If there is zero disposal cost or zero increase, there would not be an increase here. If it's the same, whether it's green waste disposal, recycling, processing, or trash disposal. Because, as Mr. Starr mentioned, they are pass-through costs. If there's no increase, there's no pass-through of that cost. If they go down, your rate goes down. Unfortunately, the cost of processing and burying trash and separating trash, we haven't seen that go negative for a very long time. But I just wanted to make that clear, and I think it's very important, not only for council members, but staff and residents to understand that their contract that was negotiated with the city years ago is a very good contract. It is a very competitive contract. And while there are a lot of other haulers that it's easy to say, oh, I give this for free, or we don't charge that. We see them. City of Pomona just went through a very recent analogy, and their rate, while it's not shown in here, I think has gone up and will be going up even higher. I think Mr. Starr could probably speak to that. And that is through a competitive bid process. So the city of Montclair, we've serviced it for many years. We have a very competitive rate. We have a very solid contract. And most of all, we have a tremendous relationship, not only with the city, its residents, and council members. So I appreciate the opportunity to serve this city, and I would look forward to serving it for many years to come.
The reference to economies of scale, and when our staff was presenting that item, that topic, are we at a disadvantage because of our size in comparison to some other neighboring cities?
There are larger cities, case in point, city of Rancho Cucamonga, for example. I have a little over 40,000 residential services. I have a little over, I think, 6,000 residential services here in the city of Montclair. There is a little bit of that economy of scale because of what I'm able to do and how much we generate. But if you look at the comparative, there's not that big of a spread. Montclair, it is a smaller city, but we have a dedicated staff, and we have a dedicated fleet to serve the city.
I appreciate your time, Mike. Thank you for those explanations.
Appreciate your comment.
Absolutely. Just a couple more comments for the public to understand. As the city manager did state, not long ago, we expended some resources and money on new street sweepers that at the time we thought met state requirements. And then the state then flipped the script and passed on new regs on our equipment, deeming the ones that we just bought and didn't even live out their lifespan, but they were deemed inadequate, and we had to buy new ones. So now we're out an additional several hundreds, or I forgot what the amount he quoted us on. But that we have to take that into account too, and that's something that we have to recoup and recover for as well. Having said all that, I'm very sympathetic, as my colleague to my right has expressed, and I have expressed at the meeting where we approved this proposition inquiry regarding our residents' strict budgets and lack of extra income. I'm in favor. Thank you, Ms. Johnson and Mr. Rue, for mentioning the senior discount. That's something that we have and we're not getting rid of, and it should be maintained. I've taken a position that we should implement a discount based on the ability to pay and an income-based discount for families. And I just think it's a matter of willpower to do so. One other item.
That's a motion, I'll second it.
No, I'm not going to make a motion right now. I want residents to also understand, because I see this a lot on Facebook. Residents want to know, where can I dump my oil and my paint or whatever chemicals or what it is, whatever it might be, and many of our residents are not taking advantage of the fee that we're already being charged, it's going to be 62 cents. Is that monthly or yearly? I'm sorry. Ed?
You're talking about the household?
Yeah, is it 62 cents monthly?
Well, that's part of the, yes.
Okay, so for 62 cents a month, sorry, you can dump all those items at the Upland City Yard for free to Montclair residents. That includes even medical devices like syringes for diabetics. Free of charge, no questions asked. Your electronics, your TVs, your computers is all covered in that fee. And we're not taking advantage of it because I know, because they tell me in Upland, Montclair residents in volume are one of the lowest that report and take advantage of it, and we should, because it's something you're paying for and it's included in your fee. That all said, I get it. I get the people in the audience. I get Mr. Adams's concerns. I agree with my colleague, Mr. Rue, and I agree with many of the points our city manager said. If we can come to some agreement on some things, that'd be great. The item before us, let me also bring up, because the city manager didn't touch on this, the new 50-cent per month fee for sewer maintenance. There's an issue, and this is something that's happening in every city, in every region. Folks that use the flushable wipes, flush them down the toilet, it's causing a serious backup in the sewer lines. It's adding an extra maintenance requirement to pull them out, unclog them, and that gets passed on to us as well. It's something that we have to absorb. So that's part of the reason why that fee was brought about. If I'm incorrect, Mr. City Manager, please correct me.
You are absolutely correct. It has become a major problem, and these filter systems capture these, but they require special treatment and a lot of labor.
So it's, for those folks that want to say that the body here is wanting to stick it to the man, for lack of a better terminology, that's not the case. But I'm torn because I empathize as well. So I'm done.
Well, thank you very much, and I think we're all compassionate up here in the Montclair City Council, and that's why we have the fiduciary responsibility to look at the stuff when it comes to us, to ensure that this is the most effective action to take based on the recommendation, a thorough recommendation that staff has done. I appreciate that Burtech, I think since we've had 2 raises, one in 19, the last 19, and then the 2023 based on the last 5 years of Prop 218. And I would like to make a motion for approval of this item as is.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion, second by Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, and let's vote.
Mr. Mayor, real quickly, just for.
Go ahead.
The last time a raise was increased was 5 years ago, correct?
I'm sorry?
The last time a fee increase was implemented was 5 years ago.
I'm confused.
It was in 2023, January of
Okay,
2023.
but so the last
Before that was 2019.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's,
Prior to 18, 5 years. Okay, that's adopted 4-1, and we will move on to the consent calendar. And the consent calendar, I will start with my right. Any items to pull my right?
yes, Mr. Mayor, let me find my page, sorry. Be like boy 10 for purposes of a comment.
10, okay.
B like boy 10. C like Charles 1. C4.
C4,
C like Charles 4.
okay,
C like Charles 8.
okay.
And then I must abstain on C like Charles 6. And when we get to that item, I'll explain why.
C6?
Yes.
Okay. All right, how about my left? Anybody want to pull anything on my left? For,
I just had a question about C1.
all right, item C1, which has already been pulled. Okay. All right, so let's get.
We do have someone from the audience who has a comment on B13.
All right, on B13?
Yes.
Okay, again, I will request in the future, any members of the audience, they make a request under public comment, but we'll take it for today. So, let's take the member of the public comment first in.
Is it
Okay,
Xavier?
that's Xavier.
All right, 5 minutes. Remember, next time, public comment.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you.
I
Just
appreciate
pay-
that.
just
It
better
was
way to
just a
organize
quick
it.
question. Under number 13, we are donating these two vehicles, the 1993 Unit 308 tree truck, which I know well, been in that truck 100 times, have trimmed many of broken branches during high wind problems, and then also 311, the asphalt truck. And I see that we're showing estimated current values at 5,500 and 4,500. And then we're donating them. Are we replacing these two vehicles was my question. And they should have been completely funded already in the equipment replacement fund. So my question is hopefully we're replacing them. I know we don't have a tree crew anymore, so that's one thing, but I know that by having a tree truck in the city, when we have these high winds, we can't sit and wait for West Coast arborists, to come out for emergencies. Because I know many a times, we were always the ones out there, the first responders, and just wanted to just know that, hopefully you guys will get another tree truck or something that would be able to be used, to do that type of work in an emergency. And we had many emergencies. And that was just it. I just wanted to
Okay,
ask.
can staff just respond that quickly? They've been replaced?
Well, yeah, I believe these vehicles
Yeah,
were
I
replaced in
would
this
assume
last
so.
fiscal
I think I've
year.
seen 'em.
They're not trucks, they were haul behinds, but
Right.
still they were replaced.
Yeah, Mark is also saying yes.
A
So
haul
we-
behind tree truck?
Yeah, so,
With a lift, it's a, haul lift and it,
I've never seen one of those. I'll look it up.
look it up. All right, thank you. All right, now we'll go to item B10. So, item B10, who's that? Who wants to start off with that one?
That would be me, Mr. Mayor. For purposes of the public benefit, to summarize it shortly, the city, this item, if approved, would purchase a new medic squad fire apparatus. We haven't had a medic squad in operation for, at least maybe 8 years, maybe more. But we're finally getting, I believe, not this fiscal budget, the one prior, we had an allocation in there or a stipulation to go ahead and not reenact, but reestablish the medic squad for our fire department. I am very encouraged to see that we're going to expend just a little under $250,000 for a new vehicle. The old one that we've had in storage or sitting in the station is 21 years old. It's about time we get a new one. And once that gets in service and we get the staff for it, we will start having a medic squad answering a lot of the 911 calls, and that will alleviate the wear and tear on our present engines driving the streets to service our residents and those that are visiting in town. So I appreciate staff working on this. Thank you to the city manager for following through on this item since that budgeted item, I believe, at the last budget, and continuing that with this budget. So that's all. I'm pleased to see it.
Thank you, Councilman Lopez. The next item has been pulled is C1 also, Mr. Lopez?
Yes. On that item, it is regarding the property on the southwest corner of Benson and Mission will be, trying to look at my item here to make sure I'm not misspeaking. Seeking a sewage connection facility to our sewer, but of course we would be asking for an irrevocable annexation agreement. My question was this: at what point does that property then become basically an annexed part of Montclair?
well, not until we proceed with an annexation for the area.
So there's going to be a new housing development tract there. And so basically, the owners are fine with being removed from county authority, if you will, and being transferred over to the city?
They won't have a say. That's the point of the irrevocable.
Protesting.
They've agreed in advance that if there is a vote for annexation of that area, their vote has to be recorded as positive
Okay,
for
and
the
that's,
annexation.
that's great. And I'm actually in favor of that because, and I'm not knocking the city, but, I'm sorry, the county, but the present property is an eyesore, and it's at times, it even becomes a public health issue because of dangerous dilapidated junk and items that are dumped there where rodents have infested the property and it sits vacant. And then you have folks that sell various, I'll be kind, things on the street, and then they leave their junk and trash there when they're done. So I'm glad to see that we're going to take control of it because I think the city can beautify the property and it'll be under our sphere of influence. So thank you to staff for that. Thank you.
Does somebody else have item C1?
Yeah, my question was, just for clarity, I couldn't tell. So the city would be annexing not just the land, but also the condominium project?
Okay, we're not annexing anything. The irrevocable annexation agreement means that in order to connect to our sewer system, the property owner has entered into this agreement with the city that when the city does move forward with an annexation of the area, the property owner has to agree to join the annexation. They cannot vote against it. In this particular case, there will be a number of new property owners on the site. So I believe that our city attorney is working through the determination as to whether or not that means one vote or does that mean 34 votes? So obviously, if it's the larger number because there are that many units, that's all the better for us. But in any event, we're of the belief that nobody can object who is residing on that parcel in opposition to an annexation, whether it is one or whether it's 34, it has to concur with an annexation hearing that the city would be conducting.
Okay, and this is a private project?
It's a private property and it's a private development, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to, the next one is now C4.
Mr. Mayor, I made a mistake. It should have been C8. That's my fault.
One C8, okay. All right, then C8, go for it.
I just wanted to, again, applaud staff and for the public's benefit, the properties that are sitting on the northeast corner of Central and San Bernardino that are presently vacant. The city now owns those properties, and this agreement before us will allow a nonprofit Chaplain of the Streets organization to lease the city-owned property for purposes of helping out our code enforcement and our city operations with homeless outreach programs. And this particular entity, Chaplain on the Streets, will actually go to individuals that need mental health services, housing services, go where they're at, and will be another added benefit to our code enforcement team in the city to specifically deal with any homeless issues within our city borders. I believe maybe 2 meetings ago, we approved another entity to occupy the same building or the building next to it. But nonetheless, I appreciated what was written in the staff report, that the location there on Central will basically serve as the city's hub for homeless outreach. I think it's an ideal place to put it. It'll be visible, where even if the public wants to go in and say, hey, I know of someone who needs services, they can do so. And it'll help with alleviate some of the calls and demands for PD. I think this is a win-win situation, and I applaud it. So thank you to the Economic Development Department and all those involved. I appreciate it, and this is something positive and something tangible that the residents can see the city is doing.
Okay, thank you. All right, item C6, I believe you're going to abstain.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, on item C6, I need to abstain. I have an existing contract with a competitor of Blaze and Associates, and although I have not been compensated by the company within my contract for over a year, I am still entered into an agreement with them and must remove myself from that vote.
Perfect. So can I get approval of the consent calendar with the exception of item C6?
So moved.
Motion for the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Rue, second by Councilman Lopez. We'll vote by electronic.
Without the item 6,
Yeah, without
correct?
C6. Perfect. Then Councilman Rue and myself will move for approval item on C6. Can I get an electronic vote for C6? C6 is approve 4-1 with Councilmember Lopez abstaining. We'll go to communications now. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have the two items as indicated in the agenda, and that's to ask that the council meet in closed session for two different real property matters as identified in the agenda. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you. City Manager?
No items.
Thank you. Regarding myself, first of all, I'd like to adjourn this meeting in memory of three different individuals. First individual, Ryan Stanton, was earlier mentioned by Xavier. Obviously, again, he was the son of recently retired engineer division manager Steve Stanton. I also like to adjourn this meeting in memory of Louis Flores. Louis served on the Planning Commission from 1984 to 2019. And then previously that, he was a member of the Community Action Committee from 1977 to 1984. And I personally want to state I knew Louis very well. I served with him on the Planning Commission. He also worked as worked for an engineering firm. He was a surveyor for an engineering firm. I'm pretty sure Councilmember Rue can talk a little more about that. And he'll be sorely missed. Finally, we'll adjourn this memory, this meeting in memory of Lynette Kivette. She was a former secretary in the Human Services and Administrative Services Department with the City of Montclair. I want to congratulate the four candidates who will be running for City Council this coming November. Councilmember Lopez, Councilmember Johnson, obviously Xavier Mendez, and former Councilwoman Carolyn Raft. I want to recognize our fire department, police department, because I know last week, I think there were 5 vehicle accidents and 1 vehicle fire, so it was a busy day for both departments. And obviously, I want to recognize all of our departments in the city of Montclair for all the hard work they do. And then I believe this Friday is going to be the first game of the Montclair High School's football game at Montclair High School. So we will wish the Cavaliers a great season. So with that, I'm going to start with Councilmember Bill Rue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for recognizing those individuals. I'd like to add somebody else. I know Councilman Lopez, you knew them. They were your neighbor. They were my neighbor. Sandra Ham, a longtime resident of Montclair, passed away. She lived in Montclair from 1965 until about late 2020 when, no, actually later than that, 2022. Right after Christmas time or so of 2022, they moved due to some illness both she and Bob were going through. They had Ham Electric in Upland, long time, very, very involved with this city in the 60s into the maybe early 80s, Xavier, sometime around that time. And of course, Louis Flores, I too served on the Planning Commission with Louis. He was the first employee that Associated Engineers ever had. Associated Engineers was started in 1955. And the story was, I could be here all night telling Louis stories, but he just showed up at their door on the day they were opening with his surveyor equipment and said, "You're looking for a surveyor?" And Bob Morris said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, here I am. When do I start?" And he was there for over 50 years. So that's quite an amazing story. Louis was very good on the Planning Commissioner. I know Mayor Dutre, you can attest to the many nights he talks about drainage, where it should go, yes, Councilman Johnson as well.
Right.
And he was very good about that, and I appreciated it because that was something a lot of people didn't think about.
I recall the nights that he was the chairman of the Planning Commission, and you and I got into arguments at the Planning Commission meeting, and Louise had to break this up.
Yeah. And it was over drainage or something.
Well, yes.
Lynn was well known in the city. When I first was put on the Planning Commission, I worked with her on a few different things. I know she was always very kind and very gracious. And then part of our family as well, Steve Stanton. We send our condolences to you in the death of your son, Ryan. It was a life cut short way too early in a horrible situation. And I know we send our sympathy, and maybe we can adjourn tonight in memory of all these people.
Yeah,
We did have National Night Out It was fairly successful. It was on a Tuesday night. The next day was back to school. So for a lot of the families, they were in and out, back and forth, but it was very nice to see them with our police and our fire. They had a great movie to watch, and I think a good time by everybody who was there. I appreciate that, and that's it. I'll keep it short. I have other things, but I'll keep it short. Thank you.
Yes, we'll adjourn for a memory of all four. Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I need to add another name to the list, and that is Mr. Luis Vasquez, who was a 23-year resident of the city of Montclair. He was an immigrant from Colombia who left Colombia, I believe in the 1970s, came here to the States for a better opportunity to avoid the turmoil and the unfortunate circumstance, the military actions, the dictatorships, the instability in that region. Came here for a better life for his family, and he chose Montclair to settle and called it home. He lived on Benson, and he was in the northern part. He almost was on the tip of the city border between Benson, on Benson to Montclair and Upland. But he leaves behind 5 kids and 5 grandkids. And being that he is Colombian by birth and American by choice, the day that he passed, it was it was one of the major soccer games between Colombia and Argentina.
World Cup.
The World Cup, thank you. It was the day of the World Cup. And even though his family had passed hours before the game, to honor him, they still put on all of their jerseys, their colors, and cheered instead of shedding tears. They were screaming and cheering for their team in their dad's honor. The tributes on social media were awesome, and I extend to his son, Luis, condolences. I happen to know the son. They're just an American immigrant dream that came true for them, and they happen to be Montclair residents, and that gives it a little Montclair feel, and the fact that they chose our city to kind of get their little piece of the American dream is awesome. Concerning former Planning Commissioner Luis Flores, I believe at the time he might have been the first Latin planning commissioner, if I'm not mistaken, based on history. Because I believe Dolly Lumen at one time had told me that, if I recall, but nonetheless, the one thing that I do remember about him is he was concerned about the water and where was the water going to go on any development. So if you had a development, where's the water going to go? How are you going to get the water? How are you going to have enough water to sustain the demand on the property? And that was his issue, and it was for the better. And my colleague, Mr. Rue, mentioned Sandra Ham. We called her Sandy. She literally was my next door neighbor growing up, and growing up, the people on the street knew me as Benny. So there were times, I remember there was one time actually I locked myself out of the house. My parents weren't home yet. They worked in Orange County, and I didn't know what to do. So here was Sandy, opened up her home to me, told me to come on in. She even gave me some of her kids' shorts and told me I could take a dip in the pool, and she provided a sandwich for me. So that was Sandy Ham, and her husband was just as kind, Bob Ham. And with Ham's Electric, even though they had their own business, they sponsored many Little League teams, many Montclair High School groups and teams. They gave back to the community in which they raised their kids in. So Godspeed to the Hams and to the Stanton family suffering an insurmountable loss. To the Vasquez, the Flores, the Ham, and the Stantons, may God bless you with his peace that passes all understanding and comfort your hearts at this time. As the mayor said, this Friday, I believe at 7 o'clock, is the first Montclair High School game of the season, Montclair football varsity team of the season. They're playing Victor Valley here at Ben Baker Stadium. Our football team has gone through a little bit of a little rough patch and some internal turmoil or what have you. But if you could please come out and support them and just yell and cheer them on, it speaks volumes. It helps them. It encourages them. It's a priceless feeling for them, and you'll have a good time just sitting with residents and whatnot. So I would encourage you to come. With that, Mr. Mayor, that is all. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have two quick comments. One, I really would like to plead for awareness in our community. If you are in a car, on a motorcycle, a bicycle, a skateboard, a scooter, or if you're walking, please pay very close attention to what's going on around you. I think sometimes when things happen, it's because someone glanced away for a moment. Maybe they looked up at their cell phone, or maybe they looked at a flower or something. But please, please, all of us, no matter what mode of transportation we're using, all of us have to remain ever vigilant to make sure that our streets are safe and people are not getting hurt. Secondarily, I would like to invite all of you to the second annual Night in the Garden Taste of Montclair, which is happening on the 29th of August at the Chino Basin Water Conservation District. I think so far we have about 15 or 16 food vendors who will be there feeding us, and we have a fabulous band and some other really exciting things that are going to happen, but I'm not going to tell you that. I just want you to come and be surprised. So there are on the counter by the door, there are some flyers if you want additional information. If that is not enough information for you, you can certainly call the Montclair Chamber of Commerce at 909-985-5104. And I also need to let you know we are raffling free tickets. So if you send an email over to the chamber, you can be entered into the raffle to win 2 free tickets to the event. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my comments.
Councilmember Martinez.
I'd like to send my condolences to the family members of those who've passed recently. Other than that, I have no comments.
Thank you very much. I spent about 9 days in Europe, France, 7 days on a riverboat in eastern France. I visited a lot of interesting places. Rome, going back to the days of the Roman Empire, to the Middle Ages. It was definitely an experience there. Did a lot of partying on the boat. I'll admit to that. Saw a lot of good churches, castles, drank some good wine. So I'll just say this: bonne nuit. Good night, everybody.